Hi, my name is David. I am a former caravan ground and sim instructor at FlightSafety in Wichita, Kansas. My girlfriend and I are here to enjoy a day off at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington. Hey look. It's Paul. Paul is a first officer at a regional airline. We have been friends for several years.
Hi David, fancy seeing you here. How are you doing?
Doing fine, Paul. I am enjoying the nice weather. How's airline life? Are they allowing beards now?
David, I'll be honest, I am getting tired of so many nights on the road each month, and making it to a major airline is a long shot. FlightSafety is advertising for caravan instructors, and I was thinking about joining you at FlightSafety in Wichita. Human Resources says they have great quality of life, competitive pay and reasonable employee turnover. Boy, could I use some of that. How is life at FlightSafety?
Paul, unfortunately I was forced to resign after only a year or so. I had a disturbing experience and will tell you about it if you like. Unfortunately, it is a tale of when things go wrong, and I must warn that it is not a pleasant report.
Sorry to hear that, David. Please tell me your story, because I want to know before I take a job exactly what to expect. I trust your judgment and know you to be an honest, straightforward person who tells it like it is.
I do, Paul, but I am sorry to say the managers in this location do things that are greedy, ruthless, and clever. I sincerely advise any flight instructor looking at this job, in particular the Wichita East location where I worked, to look elsewhere for employment. Poor quality of life is the main issue, plus a bunch of related problems such as greediness, speaking deliberate untruths, and circumvention of instructor responsibility.
Holy smokes, that is big news to me, because I always thought FlightSafety was a good employer. I have known several FlightSafety instructors over the years, and most of them say it is a good job.
That may be true in some departments or locations at FlightSafety, Paul, but there are serious problems in the Caravan and King Air departments at Wichita East. It begins with untruths spoken to recruits to get them to take the poor quality of life position, and then more untruths follow to get them to stay for at least 2 years. I told you this would be alarming. I hope you do not think that I am exaggerating. There was a low quality of life when I was there. I was in Caravan as a sim and ground instructor, as you know. Speaking deliberate untruths is unfortunately common in this department. There is a lengthy 2-year non-prorated training agreement. It is a proverbial sweatshop in Caravan and King Air. Program managers speak deliberate falsehoods in order to get instructors to pass underqualified clients, of which there are many because of inadequate screening by the sales department. The main problem is the troubling lack of integrity. The first untruth you hear comes before you are hired, which is that our instructors choose FlightSafety because of quality of life, which is definitely not the case. Let's examine this falsehood and why they would use it. The situation is that sales starts off telling an untruth to incoming clients by telling them they are qualified for flight training packages they are either unqualified for in terms of pilot skill or unqualified for in terms of language skill. In turn, program managers must push these unqualified pilots through their programs to bring them to completion. When I complained about the low-quality customers to my manager, his response was, grade them as you see them, when the actual flight safety policy is quite different, that you must pass every customer, because if you do not, you will be negatively censored by the feedback system. Both the unqualified clients receiving less than passing scores and middle managers at the company react negatively if you receive negative feedback from customers, and because they should not have been sold the flight training packages to begin with, you often receive negative feedbacks. However, this causes an automatic notification to middle managers who approach you about the negative feedback and assume you are the problem, when the focus on revenue is often the real problem. In such an environment, there is no way to safely adhere to flight standards without reprisal.
I agree, David, that sounds like a conflict of interest.
Yes, Paul, is a conflict of interest with the primary duty of an instructor, which is to evaluate students with respect to flight standards and not the revenue stream. If you're under the threat of management reprisal for bad feedback, you could lose your job. In such a situation, one is not able to evaluate students openly without some pretty threatening implications. There is great pressure on instructors to pass students without meeting pilot performance standards in the case of inadequate performance. The flight safety way is to bend flight standards to pass revenue generators quickly through the system. However, this puts the safety of the public at peril, as well as the pilots who are inadequate to fly the airplane. The problem isn't feedback as a monitoring tool, it is the low quality of clients who are accepted in order to boost revenue, the lack of confidentiality in the feedback system, and the overemphasis on revenue.
Okay, David, then tell me more about the quality of life.
As for quality of life, because there is an overemphasis on revenue, you tend to get heavy, hastily made schedules drawn only hours beforehand. 6-day work weeks are typical. 57 hours a week is a common work week. Graveyard shifts for weeks in a row are common. Long work days are the norm. I was told the target for instructor-client contact for me, the metric used for maximizing revenue, is 113 hours per month, which is 40 hours over FlightSafety's own idea of normal full-time work. When you tally what it takes in order to support such a heavy load, you arrive at a figure around 220 total work hours per month, or about 55 to 60 work hours per week. They obviously intend to overwork you, so the claim that quality of life is good is simply false. Quality of life is an outright, deliberate untruth used by human resources to boost recruiting.
Sure sounds like it, David. I do not see how they can say there is quality of life when you're working 55 plus hours per week.
Right, Paul, and when I complained to my boss about this, I was told we are temporarily understaffed. But I never saw much evidence they are ever adequately staffed in Caravan or King Air. I suspect this was another falsehood because the company knowingly decides not to hire more instructors and is always understaffed. Paul, an instructor in these programs does not get many weekends free. You should expect months on end with weekends occupied by work. During training you'll get a few weekends free, and things will look good for a while, but once you are qualified as an instructor you will work almost all your weekends as a matter of routine duty. If a hastily made weekly schedule does not show Saturday on duty, then instructors are expected to stand by the telephone in case a program manager calls, and they usually do. There is no pilot group defending or promoting decent work rules for instructors. I was routinely called to work on Saturdays, and worse, it is possible you can work a 6-day week and yet need to show up at 4 a.m. for work on the following Monday. You need to be aware of this before you take the job.
Thanks, David, for telling me what's going on there, and I appreciate your honesty, and I am also sorry you have to go through all that.
One thing to know also, Paul, is that because of the long weeks and having to work most weekends, some of your fellow instructors profess a religious faith that has Saturday as Sabbath in order to get the weekend off. Federal law of course prohibits discrimination based on religion, and unfortunately some of your colleagues misuse that law. Because the company slows work on Sunday, if someone requires Saturday for their Sabbath, the result is the entire weekend off. This was discouraging to those of us who are honest.
I do not really blame them for wanting weekend off, David, but it disturbs me to hear the environment there promotes lying about such things.
Paul, you need to understand that Caravan and King Air programs are the best revenue generators at this facility, and as such they are worked very long and hard. They are usually run through nights and weekends. It's truly a sweatshop job. These programs are pilot mills designed to expedite customers in largest possible numbers. Because of the unpleasant nature of these departments, there is a high turnover among instructors, and consequently a lot of openings are advertised. Instructors transfer out of these departments for obvious reasons, and there is a waiting list to get transferred. At my initial job interview I was told the average flight safety employee has a tenure of around 9 years, but that was untrue for Caravan and King Air, which are around a year or two.
A high turnover would make sense in that environment.
Yes, and the job of program manager is another difficult job, which is why my program manager had difficulty being candid and straightforward with me. His job is to get people like me to work long hours across 6-day work weeks at night and on weekends. Such an atmosphere undermines trust.
So you had a poor working relationship with your program manager, David?
Very poor, Paul, and I think it was due to the inordinate pressure on him to maximize revenue. But another topic we must discuss is why a lengthy training contract is seen as necessary at FlightSafety. It is because poor quality of life leads to high turnover. FlightSafety has a 2-year non-prorated training agreement which forces you to stay for 2 years. This is quite possibly the longest training contract in the industry. Any job that requires such a lengthy, non-prorated training contract is a raw deal. Human Resources appears to know it is a bad deal for pilots and offers the claim that FlightSafety needs 2 years in order to make back the costly training investment. This is another falsehood. The fact is that no other pilot job, even those requiring training to higher performance standards, has such a lengthy contract or conditions. Most do not have a contract at all. For comparison, the regional airlines have high investment costs but train to even higher standards in only 3 months.
2 years term on a non-prorated training contract is pretty unusual these days.
Paul, there is more, I am afraid, and to me this is more troubling than quality of life or greed. I was told by a senior Caravan check instructor, the short one who has been there a long time, to deliberately omit relevant facts about the airplane I teach. This is obviously a troubling problem. These are facts that are relevant to safety of the airplane and are fully backed by manufacturer data. They are also facts I learned from my own experience flying the airplane, and while ostensibly a deliberate omission like this could make the airplane appear to be safer than it is, I do not know why he would want to omit the data unless it had to do with maximizing revenue.
I am baffled by that too, David. I do not understand why he would want to leave out the truth.
I really do not know, Paul. but it was troubling. His reaction was, "You do not understand what we do here." I think it was because he knows that flight safety puts revenue above safety, and whatever the reason, I could not abide this lapse in integrity and had no option but to resign. Since this was prior to completion of my 2-year training contract, flight safety quickly came after me for $15,000, which I do not have. I wrote directly to the CEO asking for forgiveness of the agreement on the plea that I did not know what I was getting into with all this lying and long hours, but he did not bother a reply. The bill for $15,000 still comes, so I strongly urge you never to sign this training contract. It's a bad deal and there are better employers than flight safety.
David, there is no way I am going to sign that horrible training agreement. After all that you are telling me, I will look elsewhere for a job in aviation than flight safety.
If you enjoy flying, then keep looking for a pilot job with genuine quality of life, Paul. Flight safety needs to make some serious changes to develop a more honest, transparent, and ethical workplace. They should stop suing people and place ethical behavior ahead of revenue.
I agree, David. Let's forget all this and get a beer.
Damn tooting, Paul. Linda and I will meet you at the usual watering hole in a little while. We can shoot some pool and talk about old times.